Well, good morning, and thank you for your timeliness. We've transitioned from our novice teacher panel to our administrator panel, and I know you're excited to hear more about the process of transitioning from being an intern to being a classroom teacher, and we have just the right people to help give you advice about how to do that successfully. So I'm going to start by asking our panel members, and we do have 4 panel members for you this morning, to just go ahead and introduce themselves, their name, the district they work for, and maybe some of their experience in education to help you know the perspective they're providing. Who would like to begin?
I can go ahead and start. I'm Melissa Fink. I am the Assistant Superintendent for Pre-K through 7 in Springdale, Curriculum and Instruction. My previous education experience, I was the principal at Jones for many, many years, up until this year. And I actually got my start in teaching through the MAT program at the University of Arkansas. So I kind of have some understanding about what your year's been like this year.
I can go next. I am Jill Jackson. I am now the principal at Jones Elementary. I came in after Ms. Fink. I am on my 23rd year of education. I graduated from Arkansas State University, so my program did look a little bit different, but I taught kindergarten and first grade and was a literacy specialist for a K through 5 building. And then this is my 5th year as a principal. So I'm excited for your opportunities and have several of you in my building.
Hi, I'm Annette Thompson, and I'm the principal at George Elementary School, and will be transitioning to the Jim D. Rollins Elementary School of Innovation in August. I've been in the Springdale School District for many years. I started at Smith Elementary actually as the first cohort of mentor teachers back when when they first began the MAT process. So I've been at it a long time, and I really am a fan of the University of Arkansas's program for education development, both the bachelor's and the master's degree program. So I'm glad to be here today.
Good morning. I'm Roger Hill, and I'm the Assistant Superintendent for HR for the Rogers School District. And I've had the experience of starting in a small school in Gentry as a middle school math teacher, then was assistant principal at Ramey Junior High in Fayetteville, and then had the privilege of opening Kirksey Middle School in Rogers and was principal there for 15 years. Some of you probably attended that school. And so I was at Kirksey for 15, and now I'm about year 10 in this role. And one of the things, and I appreciate the others' comments about the support for the internship, when I was principal at Kirksey, every year, this was back a few years ago when we had that middle school internship, every year at Kirksey when I was principal, we were a partner with that. So we greatly value the experience that you're getting, whether it's at Oldwire and Rogers, or whether it's other schools across Northwest Arkansas. So the internship is something, so I just pat you on the back. Good call. This is a good program. It will prepare you well. And it's the panelists all here are very, very supportive of the program that you're in. So good morning.
Thank you so much for your kind words. The number one question that we have is, when should we start applying for jobs? Could you help us know what that process looks like across your districts and other districts in Northwest Arkansas?
I can go first for Rogers. Just yesterday or the day before, we just added a posting, and it's elementary teacher 21-22. So in Rogers, what we do not post a second grade at a certain school or third grade at a different school, because really what happens is logistically, it gets difficult to keep track of that, because what happens is I had a second grade opening because somebody retired, but the principal wanted to move the third grade teacher into the second grade, and it's actually a third grade, not a second grade. Anyway, it just gets way, way too convoluted and confusing. So you really don't even know what job you're applying for. So what we do is we have a general posting, elementary education. It's posted right now. So you could apply for that now. I would just say, make sure you apply somewhere before spring break. and we can talk more about that later. But there's a posting in Rogers up right now.
So Springdale's a little bit different. We do post by building and we do post by grade level. And there are a lot of postings online right now. If you wanted to apply for a position in our district, you would just fill out the online application. But I will tell you, as Dr. Thompson mentioned a minute ago, we're in the process of repurposing one of our elementary schools. And so we are finding new homes for the teachers at Lee Elementary, and then other schools that will be impacted by a very large rezoning because of the opening of the new Jim D. Rollins Elementary School on the west side of town. So until all of our current people are placed in new homes, we will not be hiring outside of our district, but that will eventually happen for us after we get all of our positions placed in our district. Once you've applied, it is completely appropriate for you to send an email to the principal and just say, hey, I'm so-and-so, I did my internship here. I'm really interested in talking to you about the position you have open. And then as we're able to interview outside candidates for current positions, then they will call you for interviews. Dr. Thompson or Jill, do you have anything you want to add to that?
I just wanted to follow up and say, I really prefer to get a personal email from a candidate with their resume attached. When we have an opening on the site, a lot of times it's very overwhelming with the amount of applicants that we have. So typically, if you do send us, a personalized email with your resume attached, we do take time to look at that and pull your resume, and it will stand out. So I always think that that's a great thing for you to do.
And Jill, would you mind speaking, would your preference be any different? I know that you have experience in other school districts in Northwest Arkansas that might be helpful to bring a little diversity to the panel, but would you mind speaking to other processes that you're aware of?
Yeah, so I know that, and I can kind of speak on to a couple different facets, but I know in the being in a rural district as well as larger districts, I've been in Fayetteville, and then I was previously principal in Lincoln as well. But I would definitely also email the principals, and if you're applying in the smaller districts, I would email all of those principals as well. Get on the websites, look up their email addresses, and typically the smaller districts, it's a little bit harder to apply. They don't have the funds to maybe buy the programs that the bigger districts have to run to apply for those. So look up their emails and send them, and that really means a lot to them because it means that you really reached out to them and let them know where you interned and who your principal was and who your teachers were. And I would really reach out to them through email because they do really look at those in that situation.
So a little bit of what
they do have trouble finding applicants at times.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
Sorry, Dr. Alston.
That's okay. So a couple of things. So what you've heard is it depends on the district and the school. So the answer is sometimes you're applying to a district and sometimes you're applying to a school and sometimes you're applying to a grade level. And some of you may have slightly zoned out thinking I don't even want to be in Northwest Arkansas, so this doesn't apply to me, but I would tell you that you're going to find those same things if you're applying to school districts in Texas or you're applying in Missouri or in Kansas or wherever else you're applying. These are similar kinds of things that you will find. You're getting good advice, and the answer is always going to be, it depends, because different school districts do handle the process differently. So I would encourage you to not think I'm going to Texas, this doesn't matter to me, because it absolutely does. So the next question that I have is, and you kind of have addressed this a little bit, but I think that the interns would like a little bit more specific information if anybody could clarify based on this question about the process for applying to your school or district.
I think Melissa talked about ours, but after people, like after candidates apply online, then the principals go through all of the applicants that are online and they look at their certification areas, they look at their experiences, they look at just any service work they've done, they really do spend a lot of time on the application itself, looking at this, who is the person academically, but also socially as well. How do they work with others and things like that? So they look through that. Once they screen the candidates online, they pull people in for interviews. A lot of times principals will have a team of people. Once they interview and they've checked references, they will recommend 3 candidates, or Melissa, is it still 3? Yeah, 3 candidates to Dr. Cleveland, our assistant. Oh, no, wait a minute. Kelly Hayes, our assistant superintendent for, our deputy superintendent for personnel. Once he reviews the candidates and then Dr. Cleveland reviews, and I think Melissa, you can speak to this as well because the transition, things have changed a little bit, but once our administration team reviews the candidates and decides on the best candidate, then they will do interviews as well, depending on the position. Melissa, correct me if I'm wrong, because this is new for us. And then Dr. Cleveland, with the permission of the board, makes the final decision on the candidates that go where. Is that, Melissa, anything else that needs to be added?
Yeah, Dr. Cleveland is actually the one that handles all of our certified new hires, and
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Hayes handles our classified. So if you get a call from Dr. Cleveland's office wanting to interview, it's typically a good sign that you are going to be hired in our district.
And one more thing I would just recommend, sometimes people get really used to texting and not putting capital letters on things. And you would be surprised. Have a peer look over your application before you submit so that you have correct spelling, capitalization, make sure everything's filled out completely before you hit that submit button.
I want to follow that, Dr. Thompson, with there were several people that I did not interview last year because they didn't capitalize their street address, their name, and I skipped their application and moved on to the next one.
I would agree with Jill on that those details of that application needs to be a final draft, not a rough. It's not a rough draft. It's a final draft. So the capitalization, punctuation, all that is critically important. It's the little thing you're wanting to get noticed, and you don't want something negative to slide you to the side. So no, we're not going to interview that person. In Rogers, it is a little bit different in the sense that you're in the most competitive group. The elementary is the most competitive, the one with the most applications. But we probably have the most positions for elementary, so that's a good thing. But in Rogers, what we do is we ask that you have your application in by, let's say, spring break or by April 1st at least. There will be a team of elementary principals, and we go through all the applications, and we'll pull out and we will interview about 120. So we're going to bring in a lot of applicants for what we call a screening interview. And so you're going to meet with a principal and an assistant principal. Last year we did that in a Zoom. The year before we did those in person. So this spring, I'm going to guess we're probably still going to be virtual. So you would get a principal and an assistant principal from different schools. You get that contact. They're going to take notes. They'll add their notes to, and as you're interviewing for other buildings, they can see those notes. So it's a screening interview. And then what happens is then from there, you'll get invited into the building. So they'll be with the principal, assistant principal, lit coach, math coach, counselor, whoever, or grade level teachers. So you'll have an interview at the building, looking to see, because what the reality is you guys, we've got a lot of great applicants here. It's now we're looking at who's best fit, who's going to be the best fit on this team. And so that's going to be the determination made at the building level. Then the recommendation would come down to me. Then there would be a call from me, or I don't know, I always like meeting people in person to get to know them a little bit better. I didn't do that this last year just because of, COVID and what was going on. But then the meeting with me, if you get a call from me, like they were saying about if you get a call from Jared or Dr. Cleveland, that's a good thing. So typically that's the way it worked for us.
Okay, is it preferred that they drop off a resume in person or they submit it to you online or electronically?
I would say because of the pandemic, electronic is better, but even pre-pandemic, I appreciated electronic over somebody bringing it in. When you walk into a building, you never know what the principal's doing, and 9 times out of 10, you're not going to be able to catch him or her anyway. And so my preference was always electronic.
That's my preference too. I mean, every day looks different, and I could be in a kindergarten room wrestling a kiddo or watching teachers teach a lesson. I mean, you just never know. And so electronic for me as well.
And the same for me, electronic.
Okay, do you anticipate interviews this year will be virtual, or will there be maybe a combination of virtual and face-to-face, or would you have plans for that so far?
I think, like I mentioned earlier, I think virtual probably initially, but I think it'll be real interesting to watch to see, like just over the last week or two, our numbers have come down a little bit. And so if those numbers, as the vaccine rolls out, the face-to-face is much more preferred. I think the next month or two, in terms of just what happens with those numbers, will dictate whether we can do the in-person or not. But if we do the in-person, I mean, I've had a couple of in-person interviews already this past week. I did a few Zoom, I did a few in person. If it was in person, we were in a big conference room, spaced out with masks, following protocol. So I don't know. Right now, I would say virtual, but we hope to get back to face quickly.
As I've been interviewing people for Jim D. Rollins Elementary School, and teachers have been coming in, we have done one person, and we've done them in person, but it's been in an empty classroom across the way, and I'm way back at the back of the building, and not building, way back at the back of the classroom. We're following all protocol. So I would like them to be in person, following all protocol. We'll just have to see as the pandemic rolls out. There may be some preliminary ones that are virtual, and then a secondary interview with a team that's in person.
Okay, here's the question that everybody, all the interns are dying to know. What kind of questions can they expect in an interview?
I'll go back to just my previous principal experience interviewing teacher candidates. I really looked for teachers that had a true passion and a heart for the work that they were being asked to do. I looked for teachers that I thought sincerely could develop deep, meaningful relationships, not only with students, but with their colleagues and with families. And I always took it from the angle of, I can teach a teacher anything. I can teach a teacher how to teach children to read. I can teach someone how to instruct children in math, but I can't teach that passion and that heart and that just that desire to make a long-lasting impact in children's lives. So really, those were the questions I asked, and obviously asked other questions too, like, how do you teach children how to read? And but I really was looking for that heart and that desire.
I'll piggyback off Melissa, because absolutely it starts with the relationship. So you really, as the principal, you try to find out who is this person, what's their heart, what's their passion, because that's where it starts, is building those relationships with children. And the other piece of it is, how well do they work with others, and what's their, because you're, as a principal, it's not, you're looking for the putting the team together, And so you're wanting to see the strengths of and stretch areas of a candidate so you can know where would this person fit in the team as well. So, and along with the other curriculum questions, we always ask questions where they can describe, don't tell what, but tell how you would apply teaching reading or math. Give us the how, not what your mentor teacher did, but what you would do.
Well, I would just add to what Annette was saying there is the best interview is more of a conversation. It really just is a nice conversation. It's a good interaction between the applicant and those interviewing. And also, I would say that the strongest interview is not necessarily philosophy, but more on what you've done. Well, here, tell me about your best math, or tell me about quality math instruction. Just a real general, broad question. Don't go the philosophy route. Go, well, here's a situation when I was second grade in this class. I really enjoyed this lesson, and the students really got this well. I did da 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 da. Whatever it was you did. So I think, sharing what you did, not necessarily philosophy, makes it a stronger interview. Because you have done this. You've had a year-long internship, and you will have lots of experiences and things you can pull from. And so I think that's a if you can think of conversation, and if you can think of what you've done more so than philosophy, I think it comes across a little bit better.
Yeah, and I think with Jones, I mean, one of the big things that our committee really wants to feel in the interview is what will you do to build the community and culture within your classroom? Because our kids, we have such a high poverty rate at our school. And so we want to know that you're going to build a true family within your classroom. And so we need to feel that in the interview. And we need to know that when you come into our school that you're going to truly love those kids. And so, but we need to know that at the same time that you really can embrace and know how to embrace student achievement, and that you're going to know what to do and how to not only build that student culture, but also that you're going to know what to do with those struggling readers, because they are going to be, possibly 2 and 3 years below grade level. And so we also need you to know, the true science of reading, and we're going to need you to know how to embrace the math and do all those things, but at the same time. So we need to know that passion is truly there, and that you're not just there to be a teacher, but to embrace the whole child.
And I know you all are here to hear from our administrator panel, and I know that you want to know specific questions they're going to ask and what the answers are that they're looking for. And really and truly, as a former school administrator myself, I could give you the right answer, but it's not going to be the right answer for you if it's not authentic to who you are and what your experience is. So you could parrot back to me the answer that you read on the internet that said, this is the answer to this question, but it won't ring true in your interview if you cannot back it up with, this is what I did in my internship with my students, and this is what I believe, and this is what I intend to create in my classroom. So if we could give you the answers and the questions and the answers, it wouldn't serve you really well, I don't think, but y'all can back me up on that if you have a different perspective. So let's see, I want to go to, what's your best advice for preparing for an interview?
I would say practice how to help yourself relax. So many times the interns, they come in so nervous, and we understand why, but try to breathe before you come in. Know that we are there for you when we're in your camp and wanting you to do well, no matter where you interview. So I would say practice breathing before you go in, but also just, I think, reflect about who you are as a person and a teacher, and what your experiences have been, and how that can help you answer the questions. So, I mean, reviewing science of reading and understanding, how to teach mathematics and things, but also I've always found when I just would process things in my head, what do I believe? what's my why? And then so that I come across in the interview.
One of the things that I would, and I agree with what Annette said there, you got to think through, like, how are you going to build a culture in your classroom? What's effective literacy, classroom management? Those are general kinds of things. But I remember back when I was interviewing for the principal job at Kirksey Middle School, and I walked into this room, and I bet there were 15 people. I mean, it was a big panel, and I knew there was going to be a panel kind of thing, and I was sort of nervous about it. But the thought that I had before I went in the interview, I was like, I'm just going to be me. I'm just going to share, this is who I am. This is what I think. Because if I'm trying to act a certain way because I think this is what they want, then and let's say I get the job, then that's the person I have to be. Then that's not a good place to be. I want people to hire me for who I am and what I'm bringing. So I'm just going to be real. This is what I think. This is who I am. And when you're just yourself and you're just going to go in and you're going to have a conversation, it really takes the pressure off. Just be who you are, and smile. We want you to be happy. We want happy applicants. So put a smile on your face. But I think if you can just take that pressure off of trying to be something different and trying to be Miss Perfect or Mr. Perfect, take that pressure off. Be yourself. You're in teaching because you care about kids. Enter it as a conversation about what you would do. But I think that just really takes the pressure off, and just be yourself.
And I would add too, preparing for an interview, if you are bringing a portfolio or examples of something that you did during your internship, that you're very, very selectful of what you do bring. Because as Roger mentioned, we could be interviewing hundreds of candidates for one position. And if you bring a 2-inch binder full of everything that you've ever done, it's probably not going to get looked at. But if you bring, something pretty short and specific that really targets who you are as a teacher and kind of, lets us know who you are as a person, that's probably going to get a look. But just be very targeted and specific in what you're bringing to an interview.
Just to add to what Melissa was saying, on that portfolio, you've done a lot of work for that, and we don't want to discredit that. But like I said, we've got a lot of applicants, and so don't be offended if we don't take it. And plus, you probably don't want to give it to us. You want to keep that for yourself. But in the interview, if you have that and you reference something, well, here's a lesson on and you reference it, and there's evidence of that, that may be a good way to use the portfolio as a point of reference versus, here, please take this and read this. That's probably not going to happen.
And just know you're going to be nervous when you go in. So just breathe. And if you need the panel or whoever's with you to repeat a question, ask them to repeat a question. And just like we give our kids think time, take a minute. The hardest thing is when an applicant just starts like having word vomit and just saying things. Like, take a minute, think about the question and process it. Don't just start talking to start talking. Like, process it for a second, think about it, and then answer the question. Like, give yourself a second to think through it. And get with your peers and practice. Like, think about the things that you've been learning and your, like Dr. Thompson said, your why, and practice with one another, because that makes you stronger too. Or find someone to do a mock interview as well. That's always very helpful.
Are there specific items that you're looking for on a resume?
I would say on the resume, again, it's a finished product, no mistakes. What needs to be capitalized is capitalized. The spacing is good. It needs to look good. This is a final product. It looks good. I I would say, you want your internship, who your cooperating teachers were. If you've had any experience that, like, say you worked as a camp counselor at Camp War Eagle, or if you were a Kanakuk counselor, or if you were a cell group leader, any of those kinds of things that show evidence that I like kids, I've invested in kids, I've been working with kids. Those kinds of things I think sort of catch my attention. So to say, well, I was a camp counselor for one summer, well, that's not that big a deal. Well, no, it sort of is a big deal. You spent a summer at a camp with kids because you like kids. So I like to see those kind of things on the resume. But I would also say the resume needs to be 1, maybe 2 pages. Don't go 3, 4 or more. You should be able to get everything on 1 page or 2.
And I always like just a small picture of the person that completed the resume, just because, especially if you walk into an interview and we're interviewing a lot of people for one position, it's hard sometimes to keep people straight, but I always like that visual image so I could connect the interview with what's on paper. So not like a glamour shot, but just a small little headshot. So that it just is like a reminder of who you are.
I also think being mindful of who your references are. Just for example, I have had a position um, here recently that we were working on, and all the references were family members. And so just be really thoughtful of who your references are, because as we talked about earlier, we do check those before making our final decision. And so sometimes it might come down to just that final reference check. So really think about who you use for that.
And kind of jumping off what Jill is saying, make sure if you're listing teachers as a reference that you put more than just the school phone number, because teachers aren't at school during the summer typically. Sometimes they are. So if you're listing, like if I was listing Dr. Thompson as a reference, I might need to ask her, number 1, do you mind if I use you as a reference? And number 2, may I have your personal phone number so they can call you? Because that is really, really hard trying to track down references during the summer of school officials when offices aren't open.
I think they've about covered everything. I think especially the part about also finding out everything you do that's in addition to school. It's a big deal. Like being a camp counselor for even a summer is a big deal because you learned from experiences. I have had people put a previous work experience. We know that once you enter your internship, it's very difficult to have a job because that is your job. But if you've done a job before that you have connected with and that you've kind of come and gone and maybe done throughout your college career, that would be a good reference for you. I've called them before too to find out, did they come to work on time? How did they get along with other people and things like that? That was just me personally that I have checked work experience references prior to the internship. Oh, and if you have any like social media, that can be somebody's worst enemy, because we do look at social media to see who the person is, and just watch your online presence.
I know we've given advice in the past about cleaning up our social media, but sometimes if I can't find somebody on social media, that's as much of a red flag as anything else, because it means there's probably something there they didn't want me to see and they blocked everybody on everything. So just make sure that you're portraying something that, a parent, you wouldn't be embarrassed if a parent or a principal saw. The next question is, how do you find out what school is a good fit for you in an interview, and what types of questions should our interns think about asking as they're in a job interview?
I guess the thing that, as a new teacher, as an intern, just coming in, I think the question that I think is a good question is, what type of support would I get? so how is the school going to support me as a new teacher? One, that communicates the idea that I've learned a lot through my internship, but I know I still have a whole lot more to know and learn. And so, what's the kind of support I will get, whether that's a grade level PLC, whether that's a mentor teacher, however the school has that organized. And I think it's, as far as just trying to view the culture of the school, interviews are two-way streets, and you're going to get a feel for how did I interact with that principal or assistant principal, and were there interns in that school? Ask your friends, what was it like working at Old Wire? What was it like working at whatever school? So use the network you have to find out the schools and what is the culture, because schools do have different cultures. So that's one of the things I say, what kind of support would I get? And then the network that you have, just to see, what's the word on the street? What's the atmosphere like? What's the culture like at the school that you're interviewing in?
We have talked a little bit about the portfolio, and if we were going to share a portfolio, is it better to share maybe if we're sending an electronic resume, electronic portfolio, or a link to a website, or is that something we should just bring with us to an interview in case you want to see it? What do you recommend about the portfolio?
I will say if the chances of us looking at it are greater if you send it electronically. Just because when we get an email with your resume, and if there's a link right there, I'm more likely to click on it right then and look at, what you've sent and, see your action research or, your lessons, what's going on. Be like, oh, yeah, okay, great. And it really catches my eye. A lot of times in an interview, we're doing, maybe 5, 10, 15 interviews, and they just happen so fast that, like they said earlier, it's no offense to anyone, but a lot of times there's just not time in those interviews when they're back to back to take the time to look at the portfolios. So I would definitely, I think that an electronic link or, an attachment is always a great benefit. And we can share them with our committee that way as well.
I agree. I've looked at them before interviews, and I've gone back afterwards and looked at them again after the interview as well.
Okay, let's say that I get called for multiple interviews and I get offered a job and I still have scheduled interviews. Like, what is the best way to navigate when you're trying to find a job and you might not know, maybe this is the place I really want to be, but they haven't offered me a job. Should I go to this other interview, or how do we navigate that whole process when districts are hiring at different times?
The quick and easy answer is always accept a job in Rogers before Springdale, right? No. The way that in Rogers, what has happened, I'll just give you just an example just within Rogers. So let's say that you've interviewed at multiple elementary schools in Rogers. And so I've called you, we're having a conversation, you've been recommended for a job at one of our schools. Let's say you interviewed at another school, but I haven't heard anything from it. But let's say that's your preference. You would rather be, let's say, at Old Wire because you did your internship there, but yet I've got a recommendation from Fairview. So in the interview, what has happened is I've had applicants say, I've interviewed at Old Wire. Do you know anything about the status of a recommendation for that? Would that be an option as well? And what we do in Rogers, if I have a recommendation for a kindergarten at Fairview and say 4th grade at Old Wire, but your preference is really kindergarten and you've been referenced for both, you get to decide which job you choose. I don't just offer you one. If I've got an offer for 2, if I've got a recommendation for 2, you get to make the choice in terms of which is the best fit for you, whether that's grade level, team, school, all the factors that come into that. So we would give you a choice on that. So that's more of an internal kind of thing of getting multiple offers within Rogers. You would be given a choice within Rogers. Now, if you got a recommendation from Springdale and from Rogers, then you're not given a choice. You just go Rogers. So that makes it easy.
And Springdale kind of handles that the same way. If Dr. Cleveland has 2 or 3 schools recommending the same person, when that person goes in to interview with him, he will allow that individual to pick what school he or she chooses. So that you get to have the final say. Now, what gets a little sticky is if you've interviewed at Jones Elementary and I've turned your name in and I want you to teach in my building, but you've heard Dr. Thompson may have a position coming open and you really want to interview for that position as well, and you decline the position at Jones, that sometimes that doesn't look very favorable on you, once you've had that position that you've interviewed for. Annette, do you want to speak to that?
Absolutely. We're Springdale. I mean, and so anywhere you work in our district is a great place to be. And we want people who are willing to go anywhere, because you might start at one school, but you might move to another school based on numbers, or a transfer to a different subject area, or a middle school or something. So Melissa's right. If you get a job, you go for the job that you're offered, because you'll be in Springdale. And I think I just think that, just to be honest, saying that I've interviewed, I'm just waiting to hear from other places. And I'll let you know. I mean, I've had candidates say that I've got an interview. You're interviewing me today. I've got another second interview in another district, and I'll reach back out to you, because I can't recommend. We don't say anything. We just recommend to our superintendent, and they take it from there. So we don't hire or talk to them about that. Hey, come on and work for me, and I'll tell my superintendent. We don't do that. So it goes through the correct channels, but it wouldn't look good on you if you turned down a job.
Yeah. One thing I would add is I would get my first teaching job and I would choose my second. So, it's sort of like what you get offered for. You just want to get your foot in the door somewhere. And so that, I think, sort of plays fairly well. Now, again, if you got multiple things happening at once, you may have a choice. But the idea of not accepting something but in hopes of something else, I don't know. You don't necessarily, I think, like, and this is what Annette was saying, you don't necessarily want to turn down a job, because that doesn't play very well usually. Now, let me add just a little bit. Let's say that you've interviewed for a job in Springdale, you've interviewed for a job in Rogers, and let's say that your preference really is Springdale. Don't know why, but let's say it is. So what you would do is, let's say I've offered you a job, but you did your internship in Springdale, you already know people there, and you want to do that. The way I look at it is, I'm not forcing you to choose a job in Rogers. I want you to be extremely happy about the job, but let's say you just haven't heard from Springdale yet. The best way to process that is, in my conversation, just say, thank you very much. I need to talk with my family about this. I need to process this. Can I have 24 hours to just think about it, pray about it, process this? And then what you then do is then you call Springdale back and you guys say, hey, I would really like to do this, but I got a great opportunity in Rogers. Where are we at on that? And then you can then if it's like, if they know and they're ready to make a decision, they can move faster, they can make it happen. But if it's like, well, we don't know yet, then maybe you need to, go ahead and accept the job that's been offered. But that's a way you can buy a little time, just by saying, I need to talk with my husband, I need to talk with my wife, I need to talk with my family, I want to pray about it, however you want to phrase that. But the thing is, the way I look at it is, I know Rogers and Springdale are great places to work, and we're not twisting your arm to work here. You should be excited to work at either one of these school districts.
And adding to what Roger said, not to put any pressure on you, but there are a lot of applicants to every position in our district. I know as an elementary principal, I would have 250 people apply for one position in my school. So it is competitive, and just know that, as you're interviewing, that it is a very competitive market.
Okay, is there any advice that you could share with us that would be a be sure to or be sure that you don't? Kind of words of wisdom from your experience.
I guess one of the things that there's a lot that we could say on this, but one of the things that first comes into mind is that in step one, when you're doing your application, don't get in a hurry. Take your time, make sure that what you enter is correct. The application process, it's time consuming. It just takes time to fill out the application. Now, if you're in Rogers or other parts of the state, like I know Fayetteville and Rogers, we have the same, we use the same Talent Ed or Unified Talent applicant tracking software. So you apply in Rogers, then let's say that you're applying in Fayetteville, you can copy your profile from Rogers to Fayetteville. And so that saves you a lot of time. But then Bentonville and Springdale maybe have different applicant tracking systems. So then again, you're entering your references, your phone numbers. And it's really irritating if I'm trying to call a phone number and it's the wrong number. That's frustrating. The other thing I would say too is on your cell phone, make sure you can accept messages. That's really frustrating to call, and I can't even leave a message to say, give me a call back. So make sure, and by the way, whatever your message is, like when we call your cell phone, is it professional? That sometimes it's interesting sometimes the messages you hear. So just again, present yourself in a professional light, but don't rush the project. Give yourself time, and just know it takes time, and it's a lot of work to fill in applications because you can't put all your eggs in one basket. You can't put it all in the Rogers basket or the Springdale. So you're going to be multiplying in multiple districts. And I would apply first to those that are your preferred, but just don't rush the process, because when you get in a hurry, guess what? That's when you make mistakes.
I would say too that the moment you drive on campus, your interview begins. You never know who's watching what you're doing on campus. We've seen some really interesting things happen in the parking lot that made us question the integrity of the candidate that was applying for a position in our building. So how you treat the custodian, how you treat the secretary, how you carry yourself as you're walking into the building, how you treat parents in the parking lot. I mean, from the time you drive on campus, your interview begins.
How about, since we're going, sorry, go ahead, Annette.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to change the question a little bit. So if you want to add something, go ahead.
I was just going to agree with Melissa. There have been times that people will wait out in front in the, like, waiting for the next interview to start. And do they talk with children when they come in? Do they talk to the secretary, or are they cold? I mean, there's things that are, your interview starts, like Melissa said, right when you walk in. And so that's just be you, but also be aware of your surroundings too. And there has been times where we've interviewed people, and then a lot of times we would show them the building to get them a picture of the building. And there's things people will say when they think they're not in an interview that you're like, ooh, okay. So just be you, but also be professional.
Do you have advice about what to wear, how to dress for an interview?
You don't have to wear a suit, but look professional. Don't show up in, yoga pants and a sweatshirt, but just look professional, look like a teacher. I think that, something that that is business looking, but don't feel like you have to go out and buy a 3-piece suit.
And
Yeah,
adding on to what Jill said, don't wear something you don't want to see me wearing, right? We don't want you coming in looking like you're going to a club either.
I would add to that, if it's a Zoom interview, same thing. You know, in a Zoom interview, face-to-face interview, again, have that professional look. Also, if you're in a Zoom interview, what's behind you? Is that something that's distracting? So again, you just have to think of that, what you're portraying by what's behind you, what you're wearing. So anyway, it's put that your best professional foot forward.
Okay, we're going to transition a little bit to how to get a job to advice that you have for first-year teachers.
Ask for help. It's okay not to know everything. Even the most veteran teachers have to ask for help. It's not a sign that you're a bad teacher. It's not a sign you're a weak teacher. It actually is a sign that you are a strong teacher by reaching out for help. And when help is offered, take it.
Use your mentors. That's what they're there for. Don't feel like you have to do it all on your own. Don't feel like you have to be the super teacher or the teacher of the year. The first year, it's hard. You're going to cry. There's going to be tears, just like there probably has been this year. So you're going to fall and bust your butt a little bit. That's just part of it. So it's difficult and rewarding.
Yes, I think so. I think the biggest eye opener is when you're totally on your own. It's not, you're the teacher now. You don't really have that. You have your mentors to help you in the building, but there's a different feel that you have when you know, oh my goodness, it's me, but so go to your peers for help. Always ask for help. Get to know the secretaries. The custodian will be your best friend. I mean, they'll look out for you. The cafeteria staff will feed you. I mean, just get to know the people in the building and relax and know that everybody is going to be there to help you. You're part of that family now.
One of the things in Rogers, our mission is all belong, all learn, and all succeed. And you hear the mission, you think, oh, that's for kids. Yeah, for our students, we want our kids to belong, we want them to learn, we want them to be successful, which is true. But that mission is also for me and for our teachers, for all of our employees. As an employee, do you belong? Do you learn? Are you being successful? One of the things that's been really interesting is, and I've had this conversation with a couple people who have been employees in the district but transferred to a different building. It was real interesting how COVID and the separation and the distancing really affected teachers getting to know other people in the building. It really has diminished a little bit that sense of getting to know and belonging. And so I would say, in light of this, hopefully post-COVID kind of situation we're in, like what they were saying, like, I think Annette was the one who was saying it, get to know other people in the building, get to know the secretary, get to know other teachers, get to know the art teacher, get to know, the assistant principal, get to know the facilitators. And you might have to make an extra effort just because of these provisions that we're sort of under right now. And my guess is some of that is going to carry over a little bit into next year. So you may have to be a bit more intentional to make those connections. But getting to know who you're in school with makes teaching a little more fun.
Is there any advice you would give while these people are still in their internship, like in the next couple of months? What advice could you give for that?
I would suggest when you're doing your solo, when you've got the entire class and you've been with your cooperating teacher for a while, that's the time to ask them for a letter of reference. Don't wait till 2 days before you're applying. because you want a strong letter of reference. You don't, and you know how busy teachers are. And if you're going to ask them the day before you need it, hey, can you write me a quick letter of reference? That's really not very respectful of your cooperating teacher. But when you're, taking the lion's share of the class and it's sort of all you, hey, that's a great time. One, they're seeing what you're doing, but two, they have a little time. So I just think being respectful of your cooperating teacher when you ask them for a letter of reference, the timing of that might actually end up them putting more time and then you getting really honestly a little bit stronger letter of reference.
I think also, I know that you're very busy getting ready for your action research and things like that too, but also take a look around with the other people in the building, like the special education teacher, the GT teacher, and East, or other areas that you might be interested as well, or the library media specialist. They have things to offer and insight into how to collaborate and how people, groups and teachers collaborate with each other. Looking into how they work and then asking them questions too, that's helpful.
Well, my girls here at Jones know we've talked and we've met a lot about take initiative, be bold. If you see something that needs to be done, be the one to step up and do it, be noticed. And so just make sure you're doing that. If you see something that you can help with and you know that there's something that you can, be extra, do it. Because if there's one job and, like she said, 200 applicants, you want to be the one that when somebody calls, if Dr. Thompson has something that comes open and they call and say, who would you recommend, you want to be the one. So be the one that stands out. That's my advice.
Jill, that is so true, because when the crisis comes, like you're busy with action research and other things, who steps up when it's raining outside and we're short on people helping load the cars and you're free because it's after 3:30 or whatever and it's still going on? Who jumps in and becomes part of the team? Who steps out? Who gets noticed that way? And I'm saying do it in a sincere way, but not just because you want to get noticed, but just how do you help out during a crisis? And because when you're the busiest, there's always other people that are just as busy as you. And how do you join your team and help? So Jill had great advice there.
That's kind of one of the hard conversations that we've had to have. Like, we know that you're busy and we know your plates are full and we know that you have your internship and that you have your action research, but everyone here at Jones, they have families or they have lots of stuff going on and they're just as busy and have just as much going on, and they learn to balance it just as you're going to have to do. So you just have to remember that they're just as busy or busier and have just as much, going on. And that's part of being a teacher. And so it's a good thing to figure out and learn to balance.
Okay, I'm going to ask if interns have an idea about where they would like to get a job. Should they wait until there's a job posted to reach out to a principal, or is that something that they could do before there's actually a job posted?
So I know a lot of times, even when I didn't have a job posted at Jones, people would go ahead and send me their resume via email. And I would just set up a folder in my email and I would move their email into that folder. So if I did have a job come open, I'd know that these people were interested. In Springdale, you can't apply for a position that doesn't exist. So if you are saying, I really want to be in Springdale or I really want to be in Rogers. I can just speak for Springdale. If I really want to be in Springdale, you can go ahead and reach out to the principals and let them know you're interested, but continually watch the job opening website so that you can apply when those positions do start coming available.
One of the things about applying in Rogers is we're going to have that elementary posting that's available right now. But you also, let's say there's an ESOL position that comes open and you have an interest in that. maybe an endorsement in that. What you can do is you can log back in and then connect your application not only to the elementary job posting, but you can connect it to the ESOL job. And so also on our website, there is a way that you can, there's a way you can get a weekly email that will tell you what the postings are. So if there's new postings that come up, now again, we're going to have the general one, but there's 2 hiring seasons in elementary. And that typically is sort of, I want to say May, June maybe, is there's a lot of hiring that goes on there. But then in Rogers and Springdale, sometimes we start getting close to August and we get a few more. There's more teachers hired right there, right before school starts. Now, if we're in that situation where it's August, I'm going to post a grade specific, school specific posting. And so, you know, if you're following that and you're getting those emails, that's a good thing to follow. But anyway, that's just a little bit more information in terms of how things work for us.
How about if we're sending information, say we're sending an email and a resume, would you like a cover letter? And what kind of information would you want to see in a cover letter versus in a resume?
I may be the oddball here. I'm not that much of a fan of a cover letter, honestly. Give me just something else to read, and I've never hired anybody based on the content of a cover letter. So I'm really more interested in the resume and the application and the references that we get. So maybe we just took something off your to-do list, write a cover letter. It's yeah, I think the resume is now what you can do is in the email that you send to the principal. Let's say you're sending an email to Jill. You can say, you know, just a couple of sentences that might separate you from someone else. You know, it's okay that's a little bit cover letter-ish, but if you just end the email, again, short, keep it brief, a little bit, and then attach your resume. I think the email and what few sentences you put in the email is probably better than attaching a cover letter and a resume. I don't know, Springdale, what do y'all think? Am I crazy?
I 100% agree with you. I less is more. So be succinct in what you put in your resume, be succinct in what you email, but I never really paid attention to cover letters.
We do have some candidates who are applying to jobs out of state that require cover letters. So that's why I asked the question, but I agree with you. I agree. Okay, we have 2 minutes left with our panel. If there's a question that has not been asked that you are dying to know. I've been watching the chat and I haven't seen anything come up for quite a while. There is a note there from Dr. Hallmark that you probably want to take a look at. One of the questions candidates often have is the applications ask for their licensure, but they don't get their license until later in the summer after their degree has conferred. And so we have a letter that they can upload that explains they've met the requirements and when they'll get their licensure. And there's a link on the Office of Teacher Education website and also a link here in the chat for that information for all of our candidates to access as you're completing applications and you need that information about your license. All right, not seeing any additional questions. I would just like to thank so much. I know that you all are very busy people as school administrators and district administrators and really appreciate the partnerships that we have with you and the way that you invest in our candidates. It's a win-win for us because you know, you help us create them and then you get to hire them. So we're excited about that. And I just want to, you know, let's give them a round of applause virtually. Thank you so much for supporting us and supporting these future teachers. I think that you'll be quite pleased with this hiring pool we have to send to you this year.
Good luck, everyone.
Yes,
Have a great end of your year.
And congratulations, you're about to graduate. I enjoyed getting to visit with you today.
Me too. Good luck.
All right, interns, you do have a break now. The next session, there was a message that came from Dr. Beasley. The next section is about virtual interviews, and it sounds like we'll all be doing some virtual interviews this year. So I think it's worth staying with us if you can, but that will not be in this breakout session. So you'll leave this room, but don't leave the meeting. Okay? Have a great afternoon.